What if the future wasn't a closed book? What if, scattered throughout our history, there were whispers, glimpses of events yet to come, offered to a select few? For as long as we have looked to the stars, we have also looked inward, searching for a map of the days ahead. Prophecy is a fundamental part of the human story. It's a thread woven through ancient empires, religious texts, and the private journals of kings and presidents. These predictions are more than just stories told around a fire. They have toppled kingdoms, started wars, and shaped the very course of our civilization, all based on words spoken sometimes centuries before the events they describe. The allure of knowing what's next is a powerful force. It speaks to our deepest desires for control, for certainty in a universe that often feels chaotic and unpredictable. Is there a pattern to it all? A grand design that some can perceive? From the misty mountains of ancient Greece to the imperial courts of China, prophets, seers, and oracles have held a unique and revered place in society. They were the gatekeepers to tomorrow, their words carrying the weight of destiny itself. Believing them could bring great fortune, but ignoring them or misunderstanding them could lead to absolute ruin. This enduring fascination raises a profound question about the nature of time itself. Across cultures and continents, the methods have varied, but the goal has remained the same: to pull back the curtain on the future. Some stared into flames, others read the patterns in the stars, or interpreted the cryptic verses of a divine messenger. These prophecies often arrive cloaked in metaphor and symbol, making them difficult to decipher until after the fact. Is this ambiguity a deliberate shield, or is it the very nature of seeing across the linear path of time? The stories of these predictions challenge our modern scientific understanding of the world, suggesting that there are forces at play we have yet to fully comprehend or measure. This journey into the world of prophecy is not just about spooky predictions or historical oddities. It is an exploration into the human psyche and our relationship with time and fate. We will travel back to meet the oracles who advised kings, the scholars who charted the rise and fall of dynasties, and the ordinary people who had extraordinary visions of what was to be. We are looking for answers. Are these simply lucky guesses? Are they the product of clever psychology and vague language? Or could they be evidence that the past, present, and future are more connected than we could ever imagine? The quest begins here. In the ancient world, no voice was more trusted or more feared than that of the Oracle of Delphi. High in the Greek mountains, a priestess known as the Pythia would enter a trance, believed to be channeling the words of the god Apollo himself. Kings, generals, and common folk alike would make the treacherous pilgrimage to ask their most pressing questions about the future. Their fortunes, their lives, and the fates of their nations hung on her cryptic replies. The oracle's power was immense, her influence stretching across the entire Mediterranean world. To question her was to question the gods, a dangerous proposition for any mortal. One of the most famous tales of the oracle's power involves a man named Croesus, the fantastically wealthy king of Lydia in the 6th century BCE. He stood at a crossroads, contemplating a war against the rising Persian Empire, led by Cyrus the Great. Before risking everything, Croesus sought the oracle's guidance. He sent lavish gifts to the temple at Delphi and asked a simple, direct question: should he go to war with Persia? The Pythia's answer has echoed through history, a perfect example of prophetic ambiguity. She replied, "If you cross the river, you will destroy a great empire." It was the answer Croesus wanted to hear. Filled with confidence, Croesus interpreted the prophecy in his favor. The great empire to be destroyed, he believed, was surely that of his enemy Persia. He gathered his armies, crossed the Halys River, and launched his invasion. The war that followed was a disaster. The Lydian forces were crushed, Croesus was captured, and his kingdom was absorbed into the vast Persian Empire. In the end, the prophecy had come true, just not in the way he had expected. The great empire that was destroyed was his own. The oracle was not wrong, the king's interpretation was. This story serves as a timeless lesson on the nature of prophecy. It demonstrates how our own desires and biases can color what we hear, leading us to see only the outcome we wish for. The Oracle of Delphi's pronouncements were often like puzzles, requiring deep thought and a humble recognition of all possibilities. Croesus's downfall was not a result of a false prophecy, but a self-fulfilling one, driven by his own hubris. He heard what his ambition wanted him to hear, and in doing so, he walked directly into the trap that the gods, or perhaps simple fate, had laid for him. Far from the mountains of Greece, in the ancient courts of the Middle Kingdom, another form of prophecy was taking shape. This was not about ecstatic trances but about careful, methodical observation and scholarly insight. One of the most legendary of these prophetic texts is the Tuibei Tu, or Backpusher Picture Book. Created during the Tang Dynasty in the 7th century, it is a collection of 60 poems and accompanying drawings. Its authors, the court astrologers Li Chunfeng and Yuan Qiangang, were supposedly ordered by the emperor to chart the course of China's future for the next 2 millennia. The legend says that the two scholars became so engrossed in their work that they predicted thousands of years into the future until one of them had to be pushed from behind, hence the name Tuibei Tu, to make him stop, before he revealed all of heaven's secrets. Each of the 60 vignettes is said to correspond to a specific period or event in Chinese history, laid out in chronological order. For centuries, the book was banned by emperors who feared its power to incite rebellion or panic. Yet copies always survived, secretly passed down and studied by those who sought to understand the nation's destiny. Many scholars and believers point to specific verses that seem to align uncannily with major historical events. For example, one image depicts 2 figures with a specific number of arrows, which has been interpreted as a prediction of the founding of the Song dynasty and its number of emperors. Another poem and drawing are believed to have foretold the Opium Wars and the humiliating intrusion of Western powers into China. Even the rise of the Communist Party and the leadership of Mao Zedong are said to be hidden within its cryptic verses and symbolic illustrations, describing a new order for the nation. Of course, skeptics argue that the connections are made in hindsight. The language is vague enough, they say, to be molded to fit almost any event after it has already happened. It is the classic problem of interpretation. Yet, the Tuibei Tu's enduring power lies not just in its supposed accuracy, but in its cultural significance. For over 1,000 years, it has been a source of fascination and debate, a secret map that many believe charts the inevitable course of one of the world's oldest civilizations, from its imperial past to its modern-day resurgence on the world stage. No name is more synonymous with prophecy than Michel de Nostradame, better known as Nostradamus. A 16th-century French astrologer and physician, he published his famous book, Les Prophéties, in 1555. It was a collection of 942 poetic quatrains that were allegedly visions of the future. Written in a mix of French, Latin, Greek, and Occitan, and filled with anagrams, metaphors, and cryptic references, his work has been a source of endless fascination and debate for nearly 500 years. He claimed his predictions would stretch from his time all the way to the year 3797. Interpreters of Nostradamus claim to have found predictions for some of the most significant events in modern history. One of the most cited examples is his supposed reference to Adolf Hitler. One quatrain mentions a powerful leader named Hister, who will rise from Western Europe, captivating masses with his fiery tongue and leading them into a great war. While Hister is also an old name for the Danube River, the phonetic similarity to Hitler, combined with the description of a charismatic and destructive leader, is considered by many to be too specific to be a mere coincidence. Another frequently discussed passage seems to describe the attack on Pearl Harbor. Nostradamus wrote of a great conflict in the Pacific, where the great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt. This has been linked by some to the surprise aerial assault that drew the United States into World War II. More recently, after the tragic events of September 11th, people pointed to a verse that reads, "Two steel birds will fall from the sky on the metropolis. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude." Believers argue this clearly points to the two planes and the Twin Towers in New York City, which is near the 45th parallel. However, the case of Nostradamus is a perfect storm of vague language and confirmation bias. His quatrains are so notoriously obscure that they can be interpreted to fit countless events. Critics argue that you can only find these connections after the fact by cherry-picking phrases and bending their meanings to fit the narrative you want to see. Is he truly a seer who saw centuries into our future? Or was he a clever poet whose work has become a historical Rorschach test, reflecting our own anxieties and our desperate search for meaning in the chaos of history? The debate rages on. Beyond poetic verses and cryptic images, ancient China also developed a unique form of prophecy rooted in mathematics and cosmology. This system, often tied to the I Ching, or Book of Changes, and the principles of yin and yang and the five elements, suggested that the fate of dynasties and the rhythm of history could actually be calculated. One of the most intriguing examples of this is the Shaoyong prophecy, which is attributed to a Song dynasty philosopher and historian from the 11th century. He developed a pretty complex numerological system to predict the future based on cyclical patterns. Shaoyong's method, known as the plum blossom numerology, wasn't really about seeing visions but about understanding the underlying mathematical structure of time itself. He believed that everything in the universe, from the change of seasons to the rise and fall of empires, followed a predictable 60-year cycle. By applying these numerical patterns to history, he supposedly predicted the exact timing of the Mongol invasion and the eventual fall of his own Song dynasty, events that, interestingly, occurred long after his death. His work suggested that history was not random but actually a series of repeating cycles that could be mapped out. This belief in numerological destiny has persisted into the modern era. For instance, there's a popular observation in China about a curse of the nines. Many significant and often turbulent events in modern Chinese history have occurred in years ending with the number 9. The People's Republic of China was founded in 1949. The Great Leap Forward led to widespread famine starting around 1959. A border conflict with the Soviet Union occurred in 1969. Mao Zedong died in 1976, which is divisible by 9, and major economic reforms began. The Tiananmen Square incident happened in 1989. The list continues, feeding the idea that certain numbers hold a strange power over national events. Is this evidence of a hidden cosmic order, a mathematical code embedded in the fabric of time? Or is it simply our human tendency to find patterns where none exist? It's easy to select events that fit the rule while ignoring those that don't. Yet, the persistence of these beliefs highlights a deep-seated cultural idea that fate and numbers are intrinsically linked. Whether it's the grand cycles of a dynasty or the strange coincidences of a single digit, the notion that our future can be calculated remains a powerful and tantalizing prospect, blending the logical world of mathematics with the mysterious realm of prophecy. In the 20th century, a new prophetic voice emerged from the mountains of Bulgaria. She was a blind woman named Vangelia Gushtarova, better known to the world as Baba Vanga. After losing her sight in a freak dust storm as a child, she claimed to have been granted the ability to see into the future. For decades, until her death in 1996, thousands of people, including scientists and political leaders, sought her counsel. Her prophecies were not written in obscure poetry. They were spoken directly, often with startling clarity, and a high reported success rate, earning her the title, the Nostradamus of the Balkans. Baba Vanga is credited with predicting a number of major world events with chilling accuracy. Long before it happened, she reportedly foresaw the sinking of the Russian submarine Kursk in 2000, stating that Kursk will be covered with water, and the whole world will be weeping over it. At the time, people assumed she meant the city of Kursk, and the prediction was dismissed. Only when the submarine of the same name sank did her words take on a terrifying new meaning. She is also said to have predicted the 9/11 attacks in 1989, warning, "Horror, horror! The American brethren will fall after being attacked by the steel birds." Her visions often touched upon the great geopolitical shifts of our time. She is said to have predicted the breakup of the Soviet Union, the Chernobyl disaster, and even the date of Stalin's death. Looking further ahead, she spoke of a future where Europe would be nearly empty, a wasteland after a great conflict with Muslim invaders. She also made predictions about the 44th US president, stating he would be an African American, and that he would be the country's last president. A prophecy that remains a source of intense debate and interpretation about what last might truly mean. Like all prophets, Baba Vanga has her share of skeptics. Many of her prophecies are poorly documented, relying on anecdotal accounts rather than written records. It's also likely that some predictions were fabricated or exaggerated after her death to fit current events. Nonetheless, the sheer volume of her supposed hits has cemented her legacy. Her story challenges us to consider whether certain individuals, through some unknown mechanism, can truly perceive events before they unfold. Baba Vanga's life remains a modern enigma, a bridge between ancient mysticism and the turbulent events of our own recent history. Prophetic warnings don't always come from famous oracles or ancient texts. Sometimes they arise from the depths of our own minds, in the quiet theater of our dreams. One of the most poignant and well-documented examples of this comes from one of history's most celebrated leaders, Abraham Lincoln. Just days before his assassination in April 1865, the American president was haunted by a vivid and disturbing dream. He felt so troubled by it that he recounted it in detail to his wife Mary and a close friend, Ward Hill Layman. In his dream, Lincoln described walking through the White House, where he heard the sound of quiet sobbing. He went from room to room, but found no one. The sound led him finally to the East Room. There, he saw a coffin resting on a platform, guarded by soldiers, and surrounded by a crowd of mourners. When he asked one of the soldiers who had died in the White House, the soldier replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." Lincoln then saw the face in the coffin, and it was his own. He was so shaken by the dream that he couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. The dream was eerily specific and deeply unsettling. It wasn't a vague feeling of dread, but a detailed narrative of his own funeral. His friend Layman was so concerned that he begged Lincoln not to go out that evening, especially not to the theater. But Lincoln, burdened by the immense pressures of a nation just emerging from a brutal civil war, felt he needed a moment of levity. He famously dismissed the warning, saying, "I think I shall go. I want to see the play." It was a decision that would seal his fate. On the evening of April 14th, just a few days after his dream, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater. The events that followed mirrored his dream with chilling precision. His body lay in state in the East Room of the White House, resting on a catafalque, surrounded by mourners and guarded by soldiers, exactly as he had foreseen. Lincoln's dream stands as a powerful and personal piece of evidence in the case for prophecy, suggesting that sometimes, the most profound warnings come not from an outside source, but from a deep, intuitive part of ourselves. After journeying through centuries of prophecy, from the riddles of Delphi to the dreams of a president, we arrive at the great debate. Are these true glimpses into the future, or are they merely the product of coincidence, psychology, and our innate human desire to find meaning in a random world? The skeptical argument is strong and logical. It rests on a few key pillars. First is the power of vague language. Prophecies like those of Nostradamus are so symbolic and open-ended that they can be retrofitted to match almost any major event with enough creative interpretation. Then there is the psychological phenomenon known as confirmation bias. We have a natural tendency to remember the hits and forget the misses. For every prophecy that seems to come true, there are likely thousands that failed, but these are quickly forgotten and cast aside. We focus on the one prediction from Baba Vanga that sounds like the Kursk disaster, while ignoring any that were wildly inaccurate. We are pattern-seeking creatures, and our brains are wired to connect the dots, even when no real connection exists. It's a survival trait that helps us make sense of the world, but it can also lead us astray. Furthermore, many prophecies can be seen as self-fulfilling. King Croesus went to war because he believed the prophecy guaranteed his victory, thereby causing his own downfall. In other cases, a prediction can be a shrewd calculation. A wise court advisor in ancient China might predict social unrest not by seeing the future but by observing the present rising taxes, famine, and a corrupt ruler. This isn't magic, it's a form of early political science. These logical explanations provide a compelling case that the mystery of prophecy is, in fact, no mystery at all. And yet some cases stubbornly resist easy explanation. Abraham Lincoln's dream was not a vague verse. It was a specific, detailed, and private premonition that was documented before the event. The sheer number of reported hits from figures like Baba Vanga, even if exaggerated, strains the limits of pure coincidence. Could there be something more at play? A faculty of the human mind we don't understand? A non-linear nature of time that our current science cannot measure? The debate between coincidence and true prophecy leaves us suspended between what we can explain and what we can only wonder about, leaving the future an open question.